Attention! This video will stop your heart. If you are brave, watch this mysterious murder video full of fear until the end. Are you ready? Then let's begin. The darkness of night had descended over the Louisiana swamps like a dead shroud. The rain fell as if the sky had split open and decided to pour all its wrath upon these cursed lands. The waters were rising. Slow, silent, merciless. Brown water seeping through rotted tree roots licked moss-covered stones, infiltrating the doors of abandoned shacks. In the midnight hours, when the storm subsided, sounds rose from the depths of the swamp, sounds resembling screams, but not quite screams. Perhaps it was the cry of something mixed with the whistling of the wind. Perhaps it was the moaning of ghosts from the past. When morning came, one of the branches of the Mississippi River had overflowed, flooding the outskirts of Mandeville, a small town north of New Orleans. Among the first rays of light, amid piles of debris brought by the floodwaters, local fisherman Marcus Webb noticed something. At first, he thought it was a tree stump. Maybe a drifting animal carcass. But as he approached with his boat, his stomach churned and his hands began to tremble. On the water's surface, half submerged, a pale arm extended. The fingers were stiff, curled as if trying to grasp the air in a final moment. After Marcus's emergency call, teams from the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office reached the scene within half an hour. As the waters receded, the horrific scene revealed itself in all its nakedness. The body of a young woman lay face down among the reeds on the swamp's shore. Her body was buried in mud, her hair tangled with moss. But the most horrifying detail was the black plastic zip ties on her hands and feet. Thick, industrial-type ties, the kind used in construction work rather than police equipment. Her wrists and ankles had been bound so tightly that the skin beneath the ties had turned purple, showing signs that blood circulation had completely stopped. Detective Sarah Mitchell arrived at the scene at 3:15 in the afternoon. At 42 years old, she was St. Tammany Parish's most experienced homicide detective. She had been doing this job for 20 years and had seen every kind of horror, from domestic violence cases to drug disputes, from organized crime murders to serial killer investigations. But even when she arrived at the scene, that familiar chill inside her surged. There were certain murders that came from the darkest corners of human nature. This was one of them. They had cordoned off the area around the body with yellow tape. The crime scene investigation team in their white suits was working carefully, photographing every square inch, documenting every detail. As Sarah's boots sank into the mud with each step, she noticed her partner detective, Thomas Reeves. Tall, dark-skinned, with an ever-serious expression on his face, Thomas was crouched beside the body, taking notes. "What's the situation?" Sarah asked as she approached. Thomas looked up. His eyes showed fatigue and deep unease. "Bad. Very bad." Sarah crouched down and looked at the body. The woman appeared young, probably between 25 and 30 years old. Her pale skin had swollen from being in the water for a long time, her face had become unrecognizable. But what was truly horrifying was the wound mark on her head. At the back of her skull, among her hair, a clearly visible bloody indentation. The mark of a heavy blow from a blunt object. "Look at her neck," Thomas said quietly. Sarah leaned in closer. On the woman's neck, even on the pale skin, purple lines were clearly visible. She noticed the neck was bent at an odd angle. It was obvious to professional eyes, her neck was broken. "They hit her head first," Sarah said thoughtfully. "Then broke her neck. Two separate causes of death. The perpetrator wanted to be sure. Or to cause suffering," Thomas added. His voice was low, as if he was afraid to even speak. One of the crime scene technicians, David Chen, approached them. He had an evidence bag in his hand. "Detectives, you need to see this." Sarah stood up and looked at the bag. Inside was a small piece of plastic, something stuck to the fabric of the woman's dress, almost missable. But this wasn't an ordinary plant fragment. It was an exotic-looking flower petal in bright pink and orange tones. "What is this?" Sarah asked. David looked at the labels on the bag. "According to our initial analysis, this is a cactus flower. But it's not a species that grows naturally in Louisiana. From the Opuntia genus, probably from Mexico or the southwestern deserts." Sarah frowned. "What else did you find on the body?" "Underwear," David said. "Very expensive. La Perla brand, Italian luxury lingerie. A single set starts at $500. And her dress isn't cheap either. We checked the label, Valentino." Thomas whistled. "So our victim is someone with money." "Or someone who's with someone with money," Sarah corrected. Her brain was working rapidly. Luxury lingerie, expensive dress, exotic cactus flower, and dead in a swamp. These details didn't fit together. "Is there a tattoo?" David nodded. "Yes. On her right shoulder. Something written in Cyrillic alphabet. We took photos, you'll need to find a translator." Sarah sighed. Things were getting complicated. "Were you able to identify her?" "Not yet. Fingerprints aren't clear due to swelling, but they'll be cleaned in the lab. We're doing DNA testing." "But..." David hesitated. "But? There's blood on the zip ties." "Not the victim's blood, the blood type doesn't match. Someone else's blood." Sarah and Thomas looked at each other. This was a new dimension. "Someone else's?" "Yes. We detected 2 different blood types on the zip ties. One is the victim's, AB negative. The other is O positive. And the O positive blood is on the inside of the ties, at the contact points. As if these ties were on someone else's wrists first." "Stop. If you haven't missed the details up to this point, you must have realized something is very wrong with this case. Whose blood was on the zip ties? Was there another victim? If you want to learn the answers, don't forget to like the video. Because the story is about to get even darker." Sarah's head began to spin. Was there another victim? Or was the second blood from the perpetrator? Research the history of these zip ties. Where they were purchased, how they were used. And examine that flower, where it can be found in this region. As evening approached, the crime scene investigation was completed. The body's initial examination was sent to the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office. When Sarah and Thomas returned to the sheriff's headquarters, the sun was setting on the horizon like a bloody stain. The sky was turning from deep orange to purple, and there was an electric tension in the air. In their office, Sarah sat down at the computer and began scanning missing persons reports. The list of women reported missing in Louisiana in the last 2 weeks was long, very long. Hundreds of people went missing every year, and most were never found. But this victim's profile was special. Young, well-groomed, wearing expensive clothes, probably of Eastern European origin. These details narrowed the list. Thomas was searching the Interpol database on another computer. "Sarah, I want you to see this," he said suddenly. Sarah got up from her desk and went to him. On the screen was a missing person report. The woman in the photo was beautiful, long chestnut hair, hazel eyes, high cheekbones. Her name was Katerina Volkov. 27 years old, born in Ukraine, but had been living in America for the last 3 years. She had been reported missing in New Orleans exactly 10 days ago. "Who filed the report?" Sarah asked. Thomas looked at the report. "A friend, Dimitri Orlov. Lives in New Orleans." According to his statement, he worked with Katerina at a restaurant. One day she didn't come to work and didn't answer her phone. Sarah examined the photo. In Katerina's eyes, there was a dream of a bright future. But now those eyes were closed forever. Let's meet with Dimitri Orlov tomorrow. And we're waiting for results from the coroner. We need to find out what happened to this woman. As night deepened, Sarah remained alone in the office. In the light of the files on her desk, she looked at Katerina's photo. This wasn't just a murder case. This was the theft of a woman's right to life, the termination in an instant of all her future hopes, dreams, and loves. And Sarah wanted justice for that woman. But what she didn't yet know was that this case would take her to a much darker place. A place where the shadows of human trafficking, sexual slavery, organized crime, and international networks lurked. Katerina Volkov wasn't just a victim. She was part of a much greater horror. And that second blood? That blood belonged to another woman. A woman who might still be alive. Still somewhere captive, chained, waiting for help. Or maybe she too was dead, lying in another swamp, in another mud puddle, waiting to be found. Sarah couldn't sleep that night. In her dreams, there were muddy waters and drowned screams. The next morning started cold and humid. New Orleans' air was always moist, but today it was especially heavy, as if the atmosphere still carried the weight of yesterday's horror. Sarah Mitchell stood in front of the St. Tammany Parish Medical Examiner Center in the early morning hours, holding her coffee cup. Thomas Reeves yawned as he got out of the car and cracked his neck. "Didn't sleep all night?" Sarah asked. Thomas nodded. "You?" "Me neither." Medical examiner Dr. Rebecca Hartman was a 55-year-old woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been examining the dead for 30 years, and nothing surprised her anymore. But today, there was an expression of deep concern on her face. When they entered the autopsy room, Katerina Volkov's body lay on the stainless steel table. The body had been cleaned, and now all the wounds, all the signs of violence could be clearly seen. Dr. Hartman began speaking as she put on her gloves. "We confirmed the victim's identity, fingerprints match with the reported Katerina Volkov. 27 years old, born in Ukraine. Time of death, according to body temperature and livor mortis, occurred approximately 60 to 72 hours ago. So she was killed 2 to 3 days before we found the body." Sarah was taking notes. "Cause of death?" Dr. Hartman pointed to Katerina's head. "First, blunt force trauma to the skull. A heavy object, probably a metal pipe or rod, was struck with great force to the back of her head. The blow was so severe that the skull fractured and bleeding occurred in the brain tissue. This blow alone could have been fatal. But that's not the only cause of death, is it?" Thomas asked. "No. There's also a broken neck. Complete separation at the second and third cervical vertebrae. This type of fracture results either from a fall from a very high place, or from deliberately twisting and breaking the neck. In this case, the shape and direction of the fracture indicates someone consciously applied force to break her neck." Sarah swallowed. This wasn't just a murder. This was torture. So they hit her head first, then broke her neck. "Yes. And there's more." Dr. Hartman looked at Katerina's wrists. "The marks left by the plastic zip ties are deep and wide. This indicates she was bound for a long time. At least several hours, possibly days. Necrosis has begun in the skin, showing that blood circulation completely stopped. The same condition exists on the ankles." "Held captive," Sarah said. "Kept bound somewhere, tortured, then killed." Dr. Hartman nodded. "And there are signs of sexual assault. Trauma marks in the vaginal and anal areas. Repeated attacks. This woman was subjected to long-term abuse before being killed." A heavy silence fell over the room. Sarah looked at Katerina's face. How frightened must this woman have been? How much must she have suffered? What did she think in her final moments? "What did you learn about the second blood on the zip ties?" Thomas asked. "There are interesting findings on that," Dr. Hartman said. The second blood on the zip ties belongs to a woman. Oh, positive. DNA analysis is ongoing, but initial results show this blood belongs to a woman approximately 30 to 40 years old. The blood is on the inside of the ties, on the contact surfaces. So the ties were first attached to this other woman's wrists, then removed and attached to Katerina. So there's another victim, Sarah said. Either still alive or another body waiting to be found somewhere, Thomas completed. Dr. Hartman continued. Also, we found nothing in Katerina's toxicology analysis. No drugs, poison, sedatives, nothing. So she experienced what happened to her consciously, fully awake. Sarah clenched her fists. This was one of the most ruthless murders they had ever known. What did you learn about the tattoo? Written in Cyrillic alphabet. I showed it to my translator friend. It means, my angel, in Russian. The tattoo style is amateur, not professional tattoo work. Probably someone had it done specially, for emotional reasons. Sarah took notes. What about that exotic flower? The cactus flower. I had it examined separately. According to botanical experts, this is Opuntia basilaris, known as beavertail cactus. It grows naturally in the deserts of California, Arizona, Nevada. Definitely not natural to Louisiana. So either it came from a potted plant, or the victim was near such a plant before being killed. Thomas frowned. How many exotic cactus growers could there be in New Orleans? Not many, Sarah said. We can make a list. Botanical gardens, private collectors, greenhouse operations. The details of the case are getting more horrific, aren't they? If you've watched this far and your excitement continues, write "continue" in the comments section. And don't forget, press the bell next to the channel icon so you can be notified of future horrific cases. Now the investigation has reached a critical point. When they left the medical examiner's center, it was 2 in the afternoon. Sarah and Thomas headed toward downtown New Orleans. Their meeting time with Dimitri Orlov was approaching. New Orleans' French Quarter was famous for its tourist crowds. Narrow streets, colorful buildings, jazz clubs, restaurants. But behind this glitter was a darker world. The underworld that was the center of human trafficking, drug smuggling, illegal gambling, and prostitution networks. Dimitri Orlov worked at a small Russian restaurant on Royal Street. The restaurant, called Matryoshka, served authentic Russian cuisine and was mostly a gathering place for Eastern European immigrants. When Sarah and Thomas entered, the restaurant was almost empty. The afternoon hour was a time when customers were few. Dimitri stood behind the bar. He was a man in his 40s, bald, heavily built. There was a fearful expression on his face. When he saw the detectives, he wiped his hands on a towel and came to them. "You must be the detectives," he said with a thick accent. "Did you find Katerina?" Sarah directed Dimitri to a quiet table. When they sat down, she got straight to the point. "Mr. Orlov, I'm sorry but I have to give you bad news. We found Katerina Volkov's body." Dimitri's face turned ashen. His hands began to tremble. No, this can't be. When did you last see Katerina?" Thomas asked. Dimitri took a deep breath. 12 days ago. Here, at the restaurant. We were working the night shift together. When the shift ended, at 3 o'clock, we said goodbye. She said, "See you tomorrow." But I never saw her again. Do you know where she went after saying goodbye to you? She must have gone home. She was living in an apartment in Marigny. But she didn't come to work the next day. I tried calling, sent messages, no answer. I waited 2 days, then reported it to the police. Sarah leaned in. What can you tell us about Katerina's personal life? Did she have a boyfriend? Family? Friends? Dimitri shook his head. Katerina was very private. She didn't talk much about herself. But I knew she came from Ukraine. Her family is there. She came here, to America, to build a better life. She was very hard-working, saving money. Was there someone in her personal life? Dimitri hesitated. Something changed in his eyes, fear, or unease. There was, a man. But I don't know his name. Katerina never talked about him. Only once, after work, I saw her getting into a car outside. An expensive car, a black Mercedes. The windows were tinted, I couldn't see the driver. Sarah took notes. When else did you see this car? 2 or 3 more times. Always late at night. After Katerina left work. Did Katerina ever say anything about this person? Dimitri swallowed. Once I asked her. Who is this man? I said. She said, never mind Dimitri, it's my business. But there was fear in her eyes. I felt it. It was terrifying. Thomas leaned forward. Did Katerina have other friends? A social circle? There were a few people. Most were Ukrainian or Russian. All of them in similar situations, newly arrived, working, families far away. But there was one person she was especially close to. Natalia. Natalia Sokolova. She was also Ukrainian. They lived together for a while, but then Natalia moved out. How can we find Natalia? I don't know. Natalia, she's also missing. About 3 weeks ago. One day she vanished. Katerina was very worried. She thought about going to the police but was afraid. If I go to the police, maybe I'll disappear too, she said. Sarah and Thomas looked at each other. This was a new dimension. 2 women. Both Ukrainian. Both missing. And now one's body had been found. Do you know Natalia's full name? Her age? Appearance? Natalia Sokolova. She was 34 years old. She had long blonde hair, blue eyes. Very beautiful. She was a very intelligent woman but life here was hard. She didn't know the language well, had trouble finding work. Sarah wanted to ask about Natalia's blood type but thought this wasn't the right time. Dimitri, I have one more question. Did you ever notice Katerina or Natalia having luxury items, expensive clothes, jewelry? Dimitri thought. Yes. Katerina sometimes carried very expensive bags. Her clothes too, they weren't the kind restaurant servers could afford. Once I asked her, how can you buy these? She just smiled and said gifts. Gifts from whom? I don't know. But I think from the man in that black Mercedes. Sarah stood up. Dimitri, thank you for your help. If you remember anything else, please call us. She handed him her card. Dimitri took the card. His hands were still trembling. Detective, what happened to Katerina? Who did this? Sarah paused. What could she say? We don't know yet. But we will find out. I promise. When they left the restaurant, it had gotten quite dark. Sarah and Thomas got in their car and sat silently for a while. 2 women, Thomas finally said. Both Ukrainian. Both missing. One found dead. The other still missing. 2 women, both Ukrainian, both missing. This can't be a coincidence. Who do you think owns this black Mercedes? Write your guesses in the comments. And if you want to see how this mysterious case is solved, don't forget to like the video. Because now the detectives are about to find the killer. And both receiving expensive gifts from the owner of a black Mercedes, Sarah added. This smells like human trafficking. Sexual exploitation. Maybe even forced prostitution. Thomas nodded. We need to find Natalia Sokolova. If she's still alive, we need to save her. If she's dead, at least we need to find her body and return it to her family. Sarah started the engine. First thing tomorrow morning, let's check missing persons reports on Natalia Sokolova. And we need to find that black Mercedes. Let's look at traffic camera records. Black Mercedes models seen around the restaurant in the last month. But Sarah's gut feeling was that this wasn't that simple. Black Mercedes, expensive gifts, missing women, torture, murder. This was part of a much larger network. And at the center of that network was someone whose face she hadn't yet seen. When she got home that night, Sarah dreamed of Katerina. The young woman, in a dark room, chained, screaming for help. But no one could hear her screams. Only silence and darkness. The third day began with an early morning meeting at the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office. Sarah Mitchell had piled files on her desk and started scanning all the information about Natalia Sokolova on the computer screen. Thomas Reeves came over with his coffee cup and sat in a second chair. "I found something about Natalia Sokolova," Thomas said. 3 weeks ago, a missing persons report was filed, not by her but by a neighbor. She was living in Mid-City, in a small apartment near Canal Street. Her neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, got worried when she didn't see her for a week and notified the police. Sarah looked at the report on the screen. What did the police do? Standard procedure. They went to the apartment, knocked on the door, got no answer. Found the landlord, entered with permission. The apartment was empty. Personal belongings in place but no Natalia. No signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle. As if the woman left home one day and never returned. Her phone? Bank accounts? Credit cards? Can't reach her phone, either off or battery dead. Last transaction on her bank account was 2 days before she disappeared, withdrew $50 from an ATM. Then no activity. Sarah put her finger to her lips. Forced abduction. But done professionally. Without leaving traces. Exactly. And now the really interesting part. Thomas pulled out a photo from the file. It was Natalia Sokolova's ID photo. A beautiful woman with long blonde hair and blue eyes. But below the photo was a note. Natalia's blood type, O positive. Sarah's heart raced. The second blood on the zip ties. Yes. DNA tests aren't complete yet but the blood type matches. Natalia may have been bound with those zip ties before Katerina. Sarah stood up. So Natalia is still somewhere. Captive. Maybe where Katerina was killed. We need to find her, immediately. But where do we start? Thomas asked. The city is huge. There are hundreds of places to hide someone. Sarah thought. Then something suddenly came to her. That cactus flower. Exotic plant. How many places could there be in New Orleans where such a rare plant is grown? Thomas turned to the computer and started searching. After a few minutes, he pulled up a list. There are 3 large botanical gardens in the city. 5 greenhouse operations. And about 20 registered private collectors, mostly wealthy people interested in exotic plants. Let's get started then. Let's visit each one. Whoever grows that plant might give us a clue to where the victims were. In the afternoon, Sarah and Thomas arrived at their first stop, the New Orleans Botanical Garden in City Park. The garden director, Dr. Alan Foster, was a 65-year-old, white-bearded, gentle man. When asked about Opuntia basilaris, he nodded. Yes, we have this species. Actually quite rare. We grow them in our desert section, in a controlled environment. But these plants are very sensitive. Wrong humidity level, wrong temperature, they die immediately. Sarah showed the evidence photo, the flower petal taken from Katerina's dress. Could this flower be from one of the plants in your garden? Dr. Foster examined the photo. Possible. But I can't be sure. These types of flowers look similar. But I can tell you one thing, this flower was freshly picked. At most a day or two ago. If it were older, its color would be faded and soft. Has such a flower been stolen from your garden recently? Or has anyone damaged this plant? No, no. Our desert section is secure. Closed at night and there are cameras. If someone tried to touch those plants, we would see it. The next stops yielded similar results. Greenhouse operations, botanical gardens, all grew Opuntia basilaris but none had any theft or suspicious activity. Toward evening, Sarah and Thomas arrived at the last address, a private mansion in Audubon Place. The person living here was Malcolm Beaumont, one of Louisiana's wealthiest businessmen. Real estate development, hotel chains, casino operations, Beaumont had his finger in many pies. And his hobby was exotic plant collecting. The mansion was enormous and ostentatious. High iron gates, wide lawns, and in back, a huge greenhouse made of glass walls. When they arrived at the gate, a security guard checked their IDs and let them in. Malcolm Beaumont was a man in his 50s, silver-haired, handsome. Well-dressed, confident, every movement controlled. He greeted the detectives in his greenhouse. Inside was filled with tropical plants, exotic flowers, and cacti. "Detectives, how can I help you?" Beaumont said, smiling. But his eyes were cold. Sarah got straight to the point. "Mr. Beaumont, we're conducting a murder investigation. A cactus flower of the Opuntia basilaris species was found on the victim. We learned you have a collection of these plants." Beaumont raised his eyebrows. "Yes, I have several specimens of this species. Very rare and valuable. But murder? That's a serious accusation." "We're not making accusations," Thomas said. "Just gathering information. Has one of your plants been damaged recently? Or has anyone picked its flowers?" Beaumont walked to a corner of the greenhouse. There, in large pots, several Opuntia basilaris cacti were growing. The plants looked healthy, pink and orange flowers had bloomed. But on one, the top flower had been picked. Its stem was fresh, not yet dried. "This," Beaumont said, frowning. "This flower should be here. Someone picked it." Sarah's pulse quickened. "When did you notice?" "I hadn't noticed. I'm not in the greenhouse every day. Only 2 or 3 times a week. My last visit was 3 days ago. The flower was there then. So who can enter your greenhouse? Do you have a security system?" "Yes. But the greenhouse is separate from the main building. And I have a gardener, Carlos. He comes every day, tends to the plants. Besides him, only I and my household can enter." "Who is your household?" Beaumont hesitated. Something changed in his eyes, unease or anger. "My wife, Victoria. And I have guests sometimes." "Guests?" "Business associates, friends. Sometimes I throw parties. People tour the greenhouse." Sarah took notes. "Mr. Beaumont, can you provide a list of guests who came to your greenhouse in the last month?" Beaumont's face hardened. "Detective, I think I may need to consult with a lawyer. My guests have privacy rights." "A woman was murdered," Sarah said in a stern voice. "And the evidence points here. Either you cooperate, or we'll bring a court subpoena." Beaumont smiled. But this smile wasn't genuine. "I understand. Then let me talk to my lawyer. I'll send you a list tomorrow morning. The evidence is coming together. Cactus flower, wealthy businessman, missing women. But this is just the beginning. If you've been following this case from the start and are curious about the ending, don't forget to press the subscribe button. Because now the case is about to turn into a much bigger conspiracy. As they left the mansion, Sarah felt uneasy. Beaumont's behavior was suspicious. And that picked flower, it couldn't be a coincidence. "This man isn't clean," Thomas said as they got in the car. "I know. But we need concrete evidence to touch him. For now, let's wait for tomorrow's list." But that night, an unexpected development occurred. At 11 at night, Sarah's phone rang. The caller was crime scene technician David Chen. His voice was excited. "Detective, the DNA results came in. The second blood on the zip ties definitively belongs to Natalia Sokolova. And there's more. We extracted DNA from tissue samples under Katerina's fingernails. The woman struggled with her attacker, scratched with her nails. And we ran that DNA through the database." Sarah jumped up. "Is there a match?" "Yes. Carlos Menendez. 42 years old, of Mexican origin. Has a criminal record, an old assault charge, 5 years ago. And where he currently works?" "Malcolm Beaumont's gardener," Sarah completed. "Exactly. This is the critical moment. The killer has been identified. But is he really the only one guilty? Or is he a pawn in a much bigger game?" Stay focused on the video and press the like button so you don't miss the answers. Because now the midnight operation is starting. Sarah hung up the phone and immediately called Thomas. "Get dressed. We're going to arrest Carlos Menendez." The midnight operation was carried out with the most experienced teams from the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office. Carlos Menendez lived in a small house in the Gentilly neighborhood. The house was in a low-income neighborhood, in a dark corner barely lit by street lamps. Sarah Mitchell and Thomas Reeves, along with the SWAT team, arrived at the house's door in the early morning hours, at exactly 3 o'clock. The door opened with a single blow from a battering ram. Inside was dark. "Police. Put your hands where we can see them." Heavy-booted footsteps, flashlights, and then a scream from the bedroom. Carlos Menendez jumped out of bed, tried to flee but after a brief chase, was laid on the kitchen floor and handcuffed. "Carlos Menendez, you are under arrest in connection with the murder of Katerina Volkov. I'm reading you your Miranda rights." Carlos, lying on the floor, was spewing curses in Spanish. There were deep scratches on his face, wounds not yet healed, scabbed over. The marks left by Katerina's nails. When taken to the sheriff's headquarters, Carlos fell silent. He was taken to an interrogation room, 4 gray walls, a metal table in the middle, 2 chairs, and a camera on the ceiling. Sarah and Thomas sat across from him. "Carlos," Sarah said in a calm voice. "We want to help you. But for that, you need to be honest with us." Carlos shook his head. "I want a lawyer." "That's your right. But know this, we have very strong evidence. Your DNA came from under Katerina Volkov's fingernails. The scratches on your face are traces of her final struggle. And Natalia Sokolova's blood is on the zip ties you used to bind Katerina." Carlos's eyes widened. Fear and panic spread across his face. I didn't do it. I didn't kill her." "Then what did you do?" Thomas asked. "Tell us, Carlos. Before you get in more trouble." Carlos covered his face with his hands. His voice was trembling. I'm just a worker. I do what they tell me to do. Otherwise they'll kill me too." "Who tells you? Who gives these orders?" Carlos shook his head. "I can't say. If I tell, they'll kill me. My family." Sarah leaned forward. "Carlos, your family is in Mexico. Nothing will happen to them. But right now you're facing a murder charge. If you don't talk, Louisiana has the death penalty. But if you cooperate, we can make a deal with the prosecutor." After a long silence, Carlos raised his head. There were tears in his eyes. Okay. Okay, I'll tell. But I want protection. Put me under protection. Deal. Now tell us from the beginning. How did you meet Katerina Volkov? Carlos took a deep breath. I work as a gardener at Beaumont's mansion. For 3 years. Good job, good money. But a year ago, Mr. Beaumont offered me another job. He said, Carlos, I can give you extra money. But you'll need to do special work. I accepted. I needed to send money to my family. What kind of work? At first it was simple. Sometimes, Mr. Beaumont would bring guests to the mansion. Young women. Very beautiful women. They had foreign accents, Russian, Ukrainian, Eastern European. Mr. Beaumont asked me to take care of these women. Bring them food, drinks, but never talk to them. Where did these women stay? In the mansion's basement. There's a special section, soundproof walls, special locks. From the outside, it looks like a normal storage area. But inside there are rooms. The women stay there. Sarah's blood ran cold. How many women? Sometimes 1, sometimes 2. They never stay long. A week or 2, then they leave. Making room for new arrivals. And you only brought them food? Carlos lowered his head. No. Sometimes Mr. Beaumont asked me to do more. Move women from one place to another. Clean them. And keep some of them under control. What does keeping under control mean? Binding. If they tried to escape, or if they rebelled, binding them with zip ties. Mr. Beaumont would buy special zip ties, plastic, strong ones. And he would tell me, don't mess up Carlos, bind tightly. And I did. Thomas leaned forward. Natalia Sokolova. Do you know her? Carlos nodded. Yes. Natalia, she stayed at the mansion for 3 weeks. She fought a lot. She kept trying to scream, trying to escape. Mr. Beaumont got very angry. He told me, bind her tight, she can't go anywhere. So I bound her with zip ties. Her hands, her feet. She stayed like that for days. Where is Natalia now? Carlos hesitated. His fear had returned. I don't know. One day, Mr. Beaumont came and said, Natalia is gone. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to ask. Sarah slammed her fist on the table. Carlos, a woman was murdered. Another is missing. You need to tell us the truth. Where is Natalia? I don't know. Carlos shouted. I swear I don't know. Mr. Beaumont took her. He didn't say where. What about Katerina? How did you kill her? Tears streamed from Carlos's eyes. I didn't kill her. I'm not lying. I just. Mr. Beaumont was hurting her. A lot. That night, in the basement, Mr. Beaumont was beating Katerina. I was there too, keeping watch. Katerina was screaming, asking for help. I wanted to intervene but Mr. Beaumont said, don't interfere Carlos, this is my business. Then he hit her head. With a metal pipe. Katerina fell to the ground. She wasn't moving. What happened next? Mr. Beaumont told me, clean up the body. Take it far away, dump it somewhere it won't be found. I was scared. If I didn't do it, he would kill me too. I put the body in my car. At night, I took it to the swamps. But she was very heavy, and I was tired. While carrying her, Katerina's hands moved. She scratched me. Her nails wounded my face. Then I realized. She was still alive. She hadn't died. Sarah froze. She was still alive? Yes. She was breathing weakly. But she was badly injured. She couldn't move. I didn't know what to do. Mr. Beaumont thought she was dead, but she was alive. Then I thought, if I take her back to Mr. Beaumont, he'll kill me. But if I leave her, she can talk, tell everyone. So You broke her neck, Thomas said in a cold voice. Carlos nodded. Yes. I thought I couldn't do it, but my hands moved. I turned her neck. I heard the breaking sound. Then she didn't move anymore. She was dead. Really dead. A long silence fell in the interrogation room. Carlos was crying, trembling. Sarah and Thomas looked at each other. This confession changed the entire case. Carlos wasn't just an accomplice. Malcolm Beaumont was the mastermind, the organizer, the real monster. Carlos, Sarah said. You're going to tell us everything about Malcolm Beaumont's operation. How many women did he bring? From where? What did he do to them? Who else is involved in this? Carlos nodded. I'll tell everything. But please, protect me. That man is very powerful. Very dangerous. If he finds out I talked, he'll find me and kill me. You'll be safe, Sarah said. But inside she knew this war was just beginning. In the following hours, Carlos Menendez told everything. Malcolm Beaumont's international human trafficking network. Young women were being brought from Ukraine, Russia, Romania, lured to America with false promises, fake job offers. When they arrived, their passports were taken, they were imprisoned, sold as sex slaves to wealthy clients. Beaumont's mansion was a showroom for these women. Potential buyers would come, see the women, negotiate prices. And Beaumont wasn't alone. The city's wealthiest, most respected businessmen, politicians, even people from the police were part of this network. It was like a club, membership by invitation only, protected by strict secrecy. Carlos gave names. Dozens of names. All were recorded. The prosecutor immediately decided to launch a major operation. Wait a minute. This isn't just a murder case, it's a massive human trafficking network. The city's most powerful names are involved. Who else do you think is in this filth? We're waiting for your comments. And watch the video to the end to see how this dark network is brought down. But the most urgent matter was finding Natalia Sokolova. According to Carlos, Natalia was the one who came closest to successfully escaping from Beaumont. That's why Beaumont sold her to a special client. But to whom? Carlos didn't know. All he knew was that one night a van came, Natalia was thrown inside, and taken away. Sarah and Thomas were now fighting on two fronts. On one hand, arresting Malcolm Beaumont and bringing him to trial. On the other hand, finding Natalia, saving her, if she was still alive. When morning came, an arrest warrant had been issued. Malcolm Beaumont was taken into custody by detectives arriving with FBI agents while he sat at breakfast in his home. The shock and anger on his face was unforgettable. Beaumont immediately called his lawyer, Richard Fontaine, one of the city's most expensive and talented criminal lawyers. And the war had begun. Malcolm Beaumont's arrest became one of the biggest scandals in Louisiana history. The media went crazy. Television channels, newspapers, internet sites, all made this story their headline. Millionaire businessman at head of human trafficking network, luxury mansion turns out to be sexual slavery center, dozens of women victims, missing persons sought. But the real battle was in the courtroom. Orleans Parish Criminal Court faced a historic trial for Katerina Volkov's murder and human trafficking charges. Lead prosecutor Margaret Rousseau was 48 years old, tough, determined. She had been a prosecutor for 25 years and was famous for winning the toughest cases. On the other side was defense attorney Richard Fontaine. 60 years old, silver-haired, an impressive orator. Throughout his career he had acquitted dozens of serious criminals. Their confrontation would be an epic battle. The trial began with Beaumont's first hearing. The judge, Judge Claudia Devereux, was strict but fair. The courtroom was packed with journalists, public defenders, human rights activists. Beaumont entered the courtroom in a suit, confidently. As if he were still that powerful businessman. But in his eyes, there was slight unease. Prosecutor Rousseau brought out the heavy artillery in her opening statement. "Your Honor, jury members," she said in a powerful voice. "Before you is Malcolm Beaumont. A businessman. A millionaire. A respected member of society. But in reality, he is the mask of a terrible monster. This man systematically brought young women from abroad, imprisoned them, tortured them, and sold them as sex slaves." Katerina Volkov was 27 years old. She came from Ukraine, hoping for a better life. But in Malcolm Beaumont's hands, her life turned to hell. She was tortured. She was raped. And finally, she was killed by being hit on the head with an iron pipe and having her neck broken. Her body was thrown in a swamp, like an object thrown in the trash. In this case, we will prove Malcolm Beaumont's guilt to you. With DNA evidence, eyewitnesses, evidence. And we will ask you to deliver justice. Attorney Fontaine skillfully began his defense. "Jury members," he said in a calm but effective voice. "The prosecutor has painted you a horrible picture. But this picture doesn't reflect the truth. Mr. Beaumont is a successful businessman. Yes, he is wealthy. But this doesn't make him guilty. The accusations based on Carlos Menendez's statements are completely baseless. Carlos made a deal with the prosecutor to avoid being tried for murder. And in return, he agreed to accuse Mr. Beaumont. This is not a reliable witness. This is a man lying to escape his own punishment. We will show you that Mr. Beaumont has nothing to do with this murder." The trial lasted for weeks. Every day, new witnesses, new evidence were presented. The first witness was forensic expert Dr. Rebecca Hartman. She described Katerina's autopsy report in detail. The skull fracture, the neck break, the torture marks on the body, the sexual assault findings. Every detail was met with disgust on the jury members' faces. The defense attorney tried to challenge Dr. Hartman in cross-examination. "Dr. Hartman, did you see who killed Katerina Volkov?" "No, I didn't." "But the scientific evidence." "Scientific evidence only shows how she died. It doesn't show who killed her." "Thank you." The second witness was David Chen, crime scene technician. He presented the DNA evidence on the zip ties. Natalia Sokolova's blood on the zip ties that bound Katerina. Carlos Menendez's DNA under Katerina's fingernails. And Malcolm Beaumont's fingerprints on items from Carlos's house. Especially on the blankets used to wrap Katerina and take her to the swamp. Fontaine tried to refute this evidence. "Mr. Chen, does Mr. Beaumont's fingerprints being in Carlos's house prove he committed the murder?" "No, but..." "Thank you." The third witness was Dimitri Orlov. Katerina's friend, restaurant co-worker. He told about seeing the black Mercedes, Katerina's fearful state, the expensive gifts. But in cross-examination, Fontaine cornered him. "Mr. Orlov, did you see that the person in that Mercedes was Malcolm Beaumont?" "No, the windows were tinted." "Then this is just speculation." "Thank you." But the fourth witness changed the fate of the case. Carlos Menendez. He was brought to the courtroom in chains, escorted by 2 police officers. His face was pale, his eyes filled with fear. But there was determination in his expression. Prosecutor Rousseau skillfully questioned Carlos. Carlos told every detail. The secret basement in Beaumont's mansion. The women held there. Katerina's arrival. The days of torture. Beaumont's violence. And that terrible night. Mr. Beaumont hit Katerina's head with an iron pipe, Carlos said trembling. He knocked her to the ground. Then he told me, clean up the body, take it away. I was scared. If I didn't do it, he would kill me. And what did you do? I put the body in my car. I took it to the swamps. But on the way she moved. She was still alive. I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. Then I broke her neck. I killed her. Whispers rose in the courtroom. Jury members grimaced at the shocking statements. Fontaine was merciless in cross-examination. Mr. Menendez, you made a deal with the prosecutor to be acquitted of murder charges, didn't you? Yes. And in return, you agreed to accuse Mr. Beaumont. No. I'm telling the truth. Really? Or are you lying to save yourself? I'm not lying. Mr. Beaumont killed that woman. I just transported the body. Fontaine grinned. You just transported the body. And broke her neck. And threw her in the swamp. But Mr. Beaumont is guilty. How convenient. The prosecutor objected. Your Honor, the defense attorney is harassing the witness. Judge Devereux nodded. Objection sustained. Mr. Fontaine, direct your questions appropriately. But the damage was done. The jury was looking at Carlos's statement with suspicion. Maybe he really was accusing Beaumont to cover up his own guilt. Tension is rising in the courtroom. Is the millionaire businessman right, or are the detectives? If you're also curious about the outcome of this case, don't forget to press the bell next to the channel icon. Because we have hundreds more mysterious cases. Now the most shocking witness is taking the stand. Prosecutor Rousseau had to play her final card. Fifth witness, surprise witness. The courtroom door opened and a young woman entered. Thin, pale, fearful eyes. But she was standing. She was alive. Natalia Sokolova, Rousseau said. I present to the court a rescued, living victim. The courtroom went crazy. Journalists taking notes, cameras flashing. Malcolm Beaumont's face turned white. Fontaine was shocked. Natalia took the witness stand. With a translator, in broken English, she told her terrible story. I came from Ukraine, she said in a trembling voice. There was job promise. Cleaning work, restaurant work. But I came here, my passport was taken. I was locked in a house. Mr. Beaumont's house. There were other women too. We were all captive. I tried to escape. But Carlos caught me. He tied me up. With zip ties. I stayed in those zip ties for days. My hands, my feet. I couldn't feel them anymore. Then Mr. Beaumont said, "You're causing too much trouble. I'm going to sell you to someone else." One night, a van came. They threw me inside. They took me to another place. A dark place. There was a man. Old, bad-smelling. He chained me up. I stayed there for months. Months. Then, police came. They saved me. Rousseau looked at Natalia. How did this police raid happen? After Carlos's statement, we launched a wide operation, Rousseau said. We identified the person Natalia was sold to, Vernon LaCroix, 63 years old, a registered rapist. We found Natalia in his basement, chained up. She hadn't eaten for 3 days, hadn't drunk water. She was at death's door. Natalia looked at the courtroom. Her eyes met Beaumont's. And in them, anger burned. That man, she said pointing at Beaumont. That man stole my life. Stole my freedom. And killed Katerina. My friend Katerina. She's dead, I'm alive. But we're both victims. She was alive. This is the turning point of the case. If you made the right decision to watch until now, support us by pressing the like button. And write "Justice won" in the comments. Because now the jury will give their verdict. Fontaine tried to shake Natalia in cross-examination. But he couldn't. Natalia was determined. She gave clear answers to every question. And the jury believed her. The trial lasted for weeks. More witnesses, more evidence. Videos recovered from Beaumont's mansion, security cameras, footage showing secret rooms. Rooms where women were imprisoned. Torture devices. And Beaumont himself, talking to Katerina, threatening her. Finally, the prosecutor made her closing statement to the jury. Jury members, the evidence presented to you is clear. Malcolm Beaumont systematically kidnapped young women, imprisoned them, tortured them. He killed Katerina Volkov. He sold Natalia Sokolova. And who knows how many other women he did the same to. This man is a monster. And justice demands his punishment. Fontaine made his final defense. Jury members, I beg you. Don't be swayed by emotions. Look at the evidence. Real evidence. Carlos Menendez's words are not reliable. He's lying to escape his own crime. Natalia Sokolova's statement is emotional. But it doesn't prove Mr. Beaumont was directly the killer. There is reasonable doubt. And if there is reasonable doubt, you must acquit. The jury went into deliberation. It lasted 3 days. 3 long, tense days. Sarah Mitchell and Thomas Reeves waited in the courthouse. Every hour was like torture. Finally, the jury returned. The courtroom was full again. Everyone was waiting for the verdict. The jury foreman stood up. He began reading the paper. Malcolm Beaumont, for the first-degree murder of Katerina Volkov. Found guilty. The courtroom erupted. Applause, crying sounds, journalists rushing about. Beaumont collapsed in his chair. Fontaine bowed his head. Additionally, the jury foreman continued, found guilty of human trafficking, unlawful imprisonment, sexual assault, all charges. Judge Devereux struck her gavel. Malcolm Beaumont, this court sentences you, according to Louisiana state law, to life imprisonment. Without possibility of parole. Take him away. Beaumont was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. His last look was at Sarah Mitchell. In his eyes was a mixture of hatred and acceptance of defeat. Sarah took a deep breath. Justice had been served. But the work wasn't finished. Guilty verdict reached and justice served. But the story isn't over. If you missed the last 5 seconds, you'll be very sorry. Watch carefully now, because a new case is waiting at the door. 2 weeks after the court verdict, Sarah Mitchell was closing the final pages of Katerina Volkov's file in her office. The case was solved. Malcolm Beaumont was in prison. Carlos Menendez, under the cooperation agreement, had received 15 years in prison. Natalia Sokolova was in a rehabilitation center, slowly trying to rebuild her life. But Sarah still had unease inside. The other names Carlos mentioned in his statement, those wealthy clients, the other members of that network. They were still out there. Some had been arrested, but most had managed to escape. Thanks to their lawyers, due to insufficient evidence, or by using their influence. Thomas Reeves entered through the door. He had a file in his hand. Sarah, I want you to see this. Sarah took the file. Inside was a report prepared by the FBI. The full scope of Beaumont's human trafficking network. Women brought from Ukraine, Romania, Moldova. Victims distributed to Louisiana, Texas, Florida. Dozens, hundreds of women. And most were still missing. This is a war, Thomas said quietly. Not just one man. A system. And we only solved one part. Sarah nodded. I know. But at least we delivered justice for Katerina. And we saved Natalia. This is a small victory, but a victory. That evening, Sarah visited Katerina Volkov's grave. At St. Louis Cemetery No. 2, she stood in front of a low gravestone. On the stone was Katerina's name, birth and death dates, and a sentence in Ukrainian. Dimitri had translated it, "Angel, rest in peace." Sarah left a bouquet of flowers at the grave. She stood silently. The wind howled through the trees. The sky was turning purple and orange in the twilight. Katerina, she said quietly. I brought you justice. I fought in your name. And we won. I hope, wherever you are, you find peace. For a moment, in the sound of the wind, she seemed to hear a whisper. Maybe imagination, maybe real. But Sarah felt a relief inside. As she left the cemetery, her phone rang. It was Thomas. Sarah, there's an emergency. A new body has been found. In Gretna, on the Mississippi River shore. A young woman. Appears to be of Eastern European origin. And, there are plastic zip ties on her. Sarah's heart sank. Another victim. Another Katerina. The human trafficking network was still active. Beaumont might have been arrested, but the organization continued. I'm coming, Sarah said. She got in her car and turned on the sirens. In the darkness of night, she sped through New Orleans streets. This war wasn't over. Maybe it never would be. But Sarah would continue fighting for every victim, for every missing woman. Because justice wasn't just a case. Justice was a way of life. And she would continue walking this path. Trying to be a light in the darkness. Because every light meant hope. And hope never died. Standing by the new body on the shore of the Mississippi River, Sarah remembered Katerina. That young woman's hopes, dreams, stolen future. And now, before her lay another woman. Another stolen life. But this time, Sarah was more experienced. More determined. And she would uproot this network. As crime scene technicians worked, Sarah looked at the sky. Stars sparkled in the darkness. In the distance, a church bell rang. And Sarah made a vow inside. It's not over, she whispered. The war isn't over. But I'm here. And I'll fight for you. For all of you. The wind whipped through her hair. And in the darkness of night, a new struggle was beginning. This incident shows us once again that no crime remains hidden. If you also don't want to miss these kinds of mysterious and terrifying true events, please subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like and comment on our video. If you want to watch mysterious and terrifying events, see you in our future videos.